Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome and thank you for joining today's webinar, where we will be having a presentation on digital transformation with Patrick Bolter, Chief Evangelist here at Hornbill. Just to inform you, delegate audio will be muted during the presentation to help facilitate flow and timekeeping. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the GoToMeeting questions facility on the right-hand side of your screen. We will collate questions and answer them at the end of the presentation. Thank you very much for taking the time to attend. I will now pass you over to Patrick.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Patrick Bolger, Hornbill's Chief Evangelist, and today I'm going to be here talking to you about digital transformation. Now, there's a clue here in the title in that it starts with your digital workplace. And the challenge for anyone basically presenting on this topic is it's not that well defined. Fortunately, I've had the opportunity to see a couple of these in action, and this is actually the second time I'm presenting this particular presentation. I did it before the ITSMF event on digital transformation. Fortunately for me, Barclay Ray had actually polled the audience in advance of my session to find out why they were there, and most of the people attending were there just to learn what it was all about. They actually saw digital transformation, the term, and they just wanted to gen up on what they needed to do. So hopefully for this audience, it's not going to be too far adrift. And what I want to do really is I want to leave you with some really practical stuff that you should be doing to help you along with your digital transformation journey. So one of the first questions I want to ask here is why? Why do we need to do digital transformation now? What's happened? So as they say, a picture speaks 1,000 words. So I'll just explain a few bits and pieces here. So if you look at this picture was taken at St. Peter's Square in Rome, and it was at the election of the new Pope back in 2005. And if you look there on the bottom right-hand side of that image, you'll see that there's one cell phone in the entire audience. So if you fast forward then to the next Pope that actually came in 2013, this is the same scene. So it's a sea of different devices and tablets and phones, etc. So this was the one thing I think that actually changed everything, because now people are carrying around well-connected, powerful computers with them at all times, and that's changed everything in terms of services. So one of the first things, certainly in my lifetime anyway, one of the first things I saw as a radical change was the impact it has on the music industry. So what you'll see here is that physical sales of media, music media, have declined. So interestingly enough, if you're an audiophile, you'll be pleased to hear that vinyl sales are still growing, in fact, but actually digital music is the one that's actually growing the fastest. But what's also happened over that period of time is the way that we actually consume that has changed as well. So if you look here at this is consumer behavior in terms of downloading music revenue. So in about 2012, and iTunes was the way to get your music, people were actually downloading all of their content. Well, that's actually shifted now. So nowadays, pretty much most stuff is streamed. And if I just look at our own habits in my own home, so Spotify, Apple Music, all of those, that's the way we listen to music today. And in fact, even our TV watching habits, it's nearly all streamed. We're in the age of attention and the age of impatience, when basically we want everything now. And I know some people will not watch a series on TV so they can come back and binge watch it later on. But that's where we're at. But what it's also done in terms of transformation is also transformed how we experience services. So Uber is the classic example. So really, if I look at what Uber does, it's no different to me calling my local cab office and asking for a cab. The difference is that what Uber does is it removes friction from that service experience. So if I call my cab office, I don't know when the cab is going to arrive. So I'm standing at my front door waiting for it to arrive, and it can be 5 minutes, could be 30 minutes, you can't depend on it. But with Uber, I could just basically select my cab and I can see where it is, and there's no waiting around, there's no kind of wrong setting of expectation. I just basically order my cab and that's it. I get into it. And then at the other end, one of the other things was basically I had to pay for it. Now, of course, I pay for it, but it's all done via the app. So again, I'm removing friction from that service experience. But if we look at a real reason why we're seeing such a difference, this infographic, I'm not sure of its source. In fact, I didn't pick that up. I presume it's an Uber thing. But what it shows is that, within 15 minutes, about 95% of Uber drivers will pick you up in about 15 minutes, and it gets nearly to 100% within 30 minutes. And that's a big difference between the Uber and the cab. The other thing that Uber's done is they've actually lowered the barriers to entry. So if you want to become a licensed taxi driver in the UK, you're looking at 2 to 4 years of doing the knowledge and actually getting up to speed. But what Uber's done is allowed people to download the app, complete their application in 2 weeks from the initial attempt to apply. Then you can be an Uber driver. Now, of course, one of the interesting things as well is that Uber is not actually making money yet. However, Uber Eats is the profitable part of the business. So they haven't released their figures. We don't know what their revenues are, but what we do know is that Uber Eats is actually making money. And while all this is going along, Uber's trying to disrupt itself again. So what we're seeing, there was some bad press about this a while ago. There was, I believe, a fatal accident with an Uber car. But again, the message here is that these people are using technology to disrupt their own space. What's also changed over that length of times, this is the Standard & Poor's 500 index, and what we see is back in the kind of late 50s, early 60s, the average time a company spent on the S&P 500 was about 61 years. By the middle of the 2010s, that had actually dropped to about 15 years, and they're predicting that it will fall further. And they say that the primary reason for these organizations not surviving is their failure to adapt to technology. We've all seen the kind of blockbuster Netflix thing. So that's a prime example of why organizations need to adapt and why they need to do it quickly and why technology helps them to lead the way. So we call this digital disruption. A couple of these companies have got a number of things in common. First and foremost, they didn't really require a massive infrastructure to start up. It was already there. So Airbnb owns no hotels. Facebook, largest content provider in the world, but they create no content. Netflix, no cinemas. Alibaba's no shops. Uber, no cars. And WhatsApp, and the only reason I put this in here really is there's an interesting story behind WhatsApp. They actually use an old programming language for WhatsApp called Erlang. Actually, it was developed in the 1980s by Ericsson, and it was really, really good at handling lots of communication between millions of users. Now, the interesting thing is that WhatsApp engineers, they don't go looking for people with Erlang skills. They're basically too difficult to find. So what they do is they hire good people, and they expect them to learn the language within about a week, and then they expect them to do stuff with it. But what is really clear is their focus. And one of their senior engineers made a comment. He said the number one lesson is just to be very focused on what you need to do. Don't spend time getting distracted by other activities, other technologies, even things in the office like meetings. So these guys are laser focused on using technology that's already out there to deliver the type of service their customers actually need. So what is digital transformation? So the problem is that there's not too many great definitions of this. So here's a few that I kind of pulled out. So the first one is called from an organization called Altimeter, as by a guy called Brian Solis, and he said it's pretty good. I think it's the realignment or investment in new technology, business models, and processes to drive value for customers and more effectively compete in an ever-changing digital economy, which I thought was pretty good. Accenture's I didn't like so much as the application of information and technology to bolster human performance. But the third one for me is the one that nails it. So this is not digital. It's not about digital. This is about business transformation. And business transformation is about people and how well they work together to remove friction from the service experience to deliver value to the customer. Now, I trialed this at the event that I was speaking at for the ICSMF and asked which people preferred, and they preferred the third one, which is just as good because that's mine. So Hopefully that kind of makes sense to you. So what we're talking about here is business transformation, pure and simple. So to put it in context, when people talk about digital transformation, they talk about the customer experience. But actually, there's evidence to suggest that a lot of people go about this digital transformation journey without mapping that customer experience and understanding of what it's all about. They also refer to what they call the SMAC stacks, social, mobile, analytics, and cloud. So using that SMAC stack to kind of gather sentiment and analytics about your customers and mapping their journey, and then kind of looking at refactoring and realigning business processes, the business model itself, to basically deliver a better customer experience. But underneath that SMAC stack, there's an awful lot of stuff. So we're not just talking about social, mobile, analytics, and cloud. What we're talking about here is your entire business. We're talking about the business model itself, your business processes, the organizational processes, and how they come together to deliver value to improve and enhance that customer experience. So that's the kind of essence of this. This is basically business transformation. So what this requires from an IT perspective is basically this concept of a commercial mindset. So knowing, for example, say, what are the competitors in our industry? What are they doing? What technologies are they using? How can we leverage technologies to deliver better services, faster services, and deliver a better experience to our customers? So that commercial mindset is really important. The other thing is basically this kind of one team. And when I talk about one team, we're talking about focused on what the business needs to achieve. And we're not just talking about your IT team or your marketing team. We're talking about all of those teams and also your entire ecosystem. So who are the suppliers that are actually helping you to deliver those services to customers? Because you all need to be focused on that one goal. The other thing is results. So the day when on time and on budget was good enough is long since passed. Now we're talking about the classic Jerry Maguire quote, "Show me the money." So when we do things, we really have to be talking about improving customer traction, improving their experience, reducing costs, et cetera, et cetera. So really what we're doing within this transformational effort has to contribute to the bottom line. This particular image, I stole it from Dion Hinchcliffe. If you don't follow him on Twitter, I suggest you do, because some really, really good insights into this kind of modern experiences. And what he does here is he splits down the organizational experience, the digital experience of the organization, into three distinct groups. So the first one is the customer experience. So as an IT function, you may or may not have direct influence over that. Hopefully you have, and if you have, you're probably closer to digital transformation than most. But the areas where we can properly influence, the one at the bottom is our supplier stroke partner experience, how we engage with them, how well coordinated, and how we educate each other in terms of the services we deliver and how your ecosystem supports that. But the most important one here, I think, and the one that's kind of more tangible for the vast majority of IT shops, is the worker experience. So how can we impact that? So this one defines things like collaboration, using effective tools, trust, meaningful work, autonomy in terms of what they do. So that's the worker experience. So in any modern organization, you probably have a head office that looks like this, perhaps without the little Vespa in the corner there, but yeah, things are looking pretty good in this image. But for the vast majority of organizations that I come across, the digital workplace feels like this. So it's antiquated, and we're using old technology and old tools, and there's a massive growing gap between what we use in our personal lives and the technologies we use at work. So this was an interesting thing for me. It is actually quite old. I'll show you the source of it in a moment. I think it's between 2012 and 2016. But what it's effectively saying is that email is still on the rise. So we can see here it's still growing. So is instant messaging. But 28% of the work week is the average time a worker spends managing email. So that's huge, absolutely huge. We attend something like 62 average meetings a month, with 31 hours spent in unproductive meetings. The majority of our workforce is now mobile. That 37.2 figure, I think, is back from about 2015. So that's probably quite old now. and 20% of the average knowledge worker's time is spent looking for internal information. So it's a huge amount of time we're spending at work just basically administering and doing things that we perhaps should find more productive ways of doing. So there's a source for that data. As you'll see, some of it's pretty old, but I would imagine that the needle has moved more in the direction of mobility. So what this means for us, it means that 21st century IT is setting new expectations of what people expect from technology. So we've moved from the graphical user interface to touch UI, next generation mobile, and now voice. So voice is playing a thing from data centers and PCs to clouds, browsers, and app stores. And we have the consumer side of technology actually taking over in terms of innovation. So what that does is it sets the following expectations that you can have your IT on any device, anywhere, anytime, elastic capacity, unlimited storage, loosely coupled integrations, dynamic content, capturing implicit and explicit knowledge, and that these tools are actually collaborative by design. The problem for us is this. So for the vast majority of IT shops I speak to, they're basically flat out. They've got all their time just maintaining their estate, maintaining the heaps of applications and services that they're actually providing. And that is just consuming everything. It's consuming all resources. We need to make changes to this. We need to make sure the stuff doesn't break, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's consuming everything. The second problem is the focus. So again, most IT shops I talk to are not at the cultural, and certainly not at the cultural, probably not at the strategic level, but actually more on the tactical side. So they're focused on how they work, their processes, their working practices, and communicating out to the business, rather than looking at the strategic objectives of what the business wants to achieve, how it's focused around its customers and improving their lot, the structure of the organization, and thinking in terms of the long-term vision. Cultural might seem a step too far. It's talking about kind of the vision of the organization, who we want to be, our values, that type of thing. And I think a lot of IT shops certainly don't feel that they can really influence that too much. And I think that idea is wrong. And we'll get through that in a moment and explain why I think it's wrong. So what I want to talk to you about is a customer of ours called Aylesbury Vale District Council. These guys have been customers of ours since about 2008, so quite a long time. And when I first met them, they were your classic IT shop. So struggling to get things like problem management working, releasing self-service, and no one was paying any attention to that self-service. I remember talking to the guy who managed this at the time, who said to me that actually self-service could have gone down for a month and probably no one would have noticed. But what happened was their CEO, a guy called Andrew Grant, he's quite a dynamic leader. He really has made a huge difference to the organization. He found and he basically believed that government funding was going to dry up for local authorities, and he was right. But in 2010, he started off this kind of idea that they should become not just a local authority, but actually a commercial organization who sold their services and brokered services for their citizens. And he started to do some very brave things within the organization. What that resulted in was from an organization that was struggling to find its feet and struggling to survive to actually winning multiple awards for their achievements. So the Sockerdom Award for the Best Council, an excellent award for their My Account feature, which citizens engage with. They won the IT Service Desk and Support Awards in 2016. And in 2017, last year, their story was featured, and they actually came away with the Digital Transformation Award from the ITSMF Professional Service Management Awards. So a truly transformational change within this organization. And actually, Andrew Grant has set a vision to say that by 2023, and I think they're on track for this, is that if you're living in Aylesbury Vale, then you can actually live there free of council tax, and that will be funded by commercial activities within the organization. So again, you can imagine the amount of change that this actually involved. So one of the first things that they decided to do was to basically go 100% infrastructure free. So they were the first council in the UK to actually roll out Amazon Web Services, go Office 365. And actually, at the same time, they approached us as the existing supplier of their IT service management solution. They said, look, we're looking to do something here. We're looking to do something different. We're not just interested in providing a cloud solution, although that supports our strategy. What we want to do is we want to find more innovative ways of working. We want to be able to better communicate. So they set the following objectives. They wanted to change the way their people work. And because they were going to be an infrastructure-free organization, supplier relationships were at the heart of what they wanted to do. So if they couldn't manage their suppliers, they couldn't deliver the service. But more importantly, they were looking at collaborative technology. So they wanted to be able to kind of collaborate and share information between each other. They wanted to radically improve their self-service. And they set us a goal. They said, look, we want to take an agile approach with this. So at the time, the IT group were told that we can only do this if it actually saves us money and if it can be seen to be of long-term benefit to the organization. So they set a fairly aggressive target of kind of going from kickoff to live within 30 days. Unfortunately, we actually met that target, and they delivered what they said they would within that period of time. So this actually stood out as an example of how to do agile projects at ABDC, and IT got a lot of publicity as a result of it. So let's look at some of the things that they've done just to improve the experience and to modernize their IT function. So one of the first things was this idea of simplifying what they do. You've all seen the kind of forms with the multiple tabs and buttons and custom this, that, and the other. They decided they were just going to really simplify what they do and ask specific questions around services. So they led with this kind of service-oriented approach. What they also use this concept of kind of visual management. So this is what we call a heads-up display. And what it allows you to do as an IT person is see exactly where things are at in the delivery cycle. So I can see what tasks are completed, what still needs to be done. And more importantly, we can actually make this stuff available to our customers via the self-service interface. So one of the next things was this kind of concept of what we call mentions. So it's quite easy. You'll all be familiar with it from Twitter and from Facebook and stuff. You just mention an individual, and then they get a notification to say, hey, you've been mentioned by this person. Now, the beautiful thing about that, I could be out and about, so I could be just on my mobile phone. I get a mention, I can answer it there and then. So it provides you a much quicker way of interacting with people and sharing information. The concept then of likes and follows. So let's say, for example, I'm a business user. I've logged a service request to get a change done within an application. I'm really looking forward to that change happening. If I follow that particular service request or follow the change itself, then actually all progress within that will actually be notified to me. So information finds me rather than me having to look for it. There's also the like function. So if, for example, I've asked one of our subject matter experts for a piece of information that helps me solve a particular problem, the concept here is if I like that, if loads of my colleagues like that, effectively we're validating what they say. And what this does, it actually allows you to capture this information through conversation and put it to use for the benefit of the wider community. This may seem like a really simple thing, but the ability to kind of put rich media, so things like images, things like video, into the actual tickets themselves, it just provides a whole graphical experience and facilitates this visual management concept. And the other thing then was this concept of awards. So what we can do is just basically say, hey, well done, Sam, you did a fantastic job this weekend. And basically the feedback I got from Adam at the time was that this became a really competitive thing within their organization. And analysts were basically trying to get on the leaderboard. So it does create that kind of decent competitive attitude within the organization, and people get rewarded for their efforts. So taking this concept of kind of visual management a little bit further, this is just from the one of the change processes. So we have the various stages: planning, authorization, implementation, review, and then the tasks that actually need to get done. But the real important activity here is that you'll see once an activity is actually assigned to an individual, It then goes into this change management board. So the idea is that as activities get completed, it moves from one swim lane to the next, to the next, to the next, until finally it's gone into a release cycle that's actually deployed to the organization. The beauty about this is that most of your changes and most of your cab activity can actually be made visible. I was talking to another customer from Great Ormond Street Hospital, and he was telling me that they used to have change management, change advisory board meetings. They'd have somewhere between 10 and 20 people in a room for about 90 minutes every single week, going through the change schedule, going through the backlog, and deciding what's going to be done and what's not. And what he said to me was, using this concept of boards and kind of more agile and transparent change management, their last cab meeting was done in 9 minutes flat. So just a rough calculation, 20 people over, saving them that amount of time, you look at it, it's somewhere between 80 and 100 days per year for all those individuals. So that's a substantial improvement. But again, this visibility and transparency is a common feature in a modern environment where you actually want to get stuff done. So all of these changes led to a fairly significant win for ABDC's service desk team, and this is them scooping the awards at the SDI awards in 2016. Now, what I did do at the time when we are actually submitting for these awards, we went out and recorded a couple of videos with some of their customers. Unfortunately, the technology has let us down today, so although I can show you the video, you're not going to hear any audio, and the video may be a bit juddery. It works perfectly well on my machine, but through the interface here, it doesn't work at all. So what I will do is I will make sure at a certain point that we actually release this to you so you can hear the video in all its glory. But I'll roughly tell you what they're talking about. So Caroline actually manages the business services, and her job was to actually look at how they work as an organization. And one of the things she decided to do was to change the way that they work, not only within IT, but right across the organization. And at the time we recorded video, they actually gave us these quotes. What we didn't realize was that this was leading to enterprise service management across the organization. And Jean Gamester, who's their program manager, she basically was saying that now you have internal teams and external customer facing teams looking at IT as a source of inspiration and innovation in terms of customer service. So apologies for the video, but we will provide you with links later on. So what that led to at ABDC was what we call enterprise service management. So really the concept is you're taking the good practices that IT are pretty good at, and you're looking to at least implement some of that good practice within other parts of the organization. But the key thing here was that IT was actually leading the way. They were seen to be innovative. They were seen to be doing great stuff. Now, other departments thought, we want a piece of that. So what they did was they had this rapid implementation approach. So they took on board about 6 different departments, anything from personnel to estates to finance. And they decided to implement service management for these parts of the organization really, really quickly. So they did one a month over a period of 6 months. And again, as I mentioned, applying some ITSM best practice, because what you'll find is that the way that IT works is not the way everyone else wants to work. They have different perspectives, they got different priorities. But one of the things that certainly ABDC found was that if you approach a HR function or a facilities function, they don't really have an awful lot of data to fall back on. So they don't know how they've been performing, where the bottlenecks are, what the customer experience is like, what they need to do to improve, what the trends are, etc. And what this quickly did was it gave them that kind of data and the evidence they needed to support continual service improvement going forward. But more importantly, I mentioned before, Adam was saying that via self-service, if it went down IT self-service, nobody would notice. The comment to me after doing this enterprise service management project was that actually if it was down for 2 minutes now, he'd have a string of complaints. So what that allowed was this kind of consistent employee service experience across the organization. So all of these different departments consolidated on one tool and one place for employees to go to when they wanted to request service from, we'll say, facilities, from finance, from IT, etc. So enterprise service management, if you can get this stuff right, enterprise service management will allow you to create that kind of impact within your organization, and other parts of your company will want in. Now, this is not a broken video. This is actually just a screenshot, and it was deliberately so because the videos are about 10 minutes long. I did a really good session with Andrew Grant, the guy in the red tie, Adam Haylock and Mary Von Hassel on the right-hand side. And I spoke to them about what they did. So this interview is about kind of them setting up collaboration within IT first and foremost, and then setting up enterprise service management across the rest of the organization. There is a separate video, and again, from a digital transformation perspective, I can't recommend this enough, because Andrew talks with real clarity about understanding your purpose as an organization, getting management teams on board and getting the message to flow down through the organization, how difficult it is to actually address the cultural issues that arrive, because this is a massive cultural shift. And if you're going to drive this type of cultural change through your organization, then it's a serious undertaking, but one that's definitely worthwhile. So again, this is AVDC's connected knowledge thing, and I'm afraid the audio is not going to play. But what I have done is, again, I've included a link at the bottom of this, and we will provide the information for you at a later stage, so you can actually view these videos in their full glory. So what did AVDC do with this entire journey? What was their critical steps? Well, the first thing they did actually was they addressed the infrastructure side of things and said, right, okay, we're going 100% cloud. Now I know that would be a big ask for a lot of organizations, but so infrastructure should probably be first on my list. But actually, the reason it isn't, because at the time I spoke to Adam about this, he said, actually, had we had collaboration before we started this infrastructure project, it would have made our lives a million times easier. So collaboration, that's the first thing I would say you need to do within your organization. If your teams are not talking to each other, there is no way you can affect a change that benefits the organization and transforms it as a whole. So collaboration, first and foremost, is something you must get right. And we'll go on to that in a moment and explain what that actually means. Second thing is the infrastructure. When I talk about infrastructure, I'm not just talking about just cloud or on-premise or anything like that. I'm talking about the whole kind of wasted effort we see within a lot of IT shops. People writing scripts for this, that, and the other. People maintaining applications and hand cranking integrations into other tools and stuff. The amount of effort and the amount of resource that actually gets put in to a project, to efforts like that is phenomenal. And if you re-examine that, you can actually decide to take away an awful lot of that resource and deploy it elsewhere. So infrastructure is a good way to look at it. ITSM tools as a classic case in point. So we do what we call continuous delivery. So basically our customers use the tool. We provide updates, on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, whatever, but they go out as often as they go out. No disruption to service, and the customer just gets that new functionality and capability and can continue using the tool without any disruption to service. That's the kind of level of thinking that I'm talking about here in terms of infrastructure, removing that heavy lifting. Then enterprise service management. So enterprise service management, if you're getting those top two things right, believe me, people will want a piece of that pie, and they'll want to know what you're doing and how you can help them in their part of the organization to introduce service management concepts that make it a hell of a lot easier for you right across the organization. Again, talking to AVDC, what they were basically saying was that it was great that we could provide all of this capability to manage services from different parts of the organization. But what really was noticeable was when these different teams started to talk to each other. So you had collaboration happening between HR and legal, between legal and IT, etc. And that's when you start to get transformational change through the organization. And the last one then is just basically what we're talking about, just digital. Digital is a bit of a misnomer. Yes, it's new technology, etc., but it's an unfortunate term because that's what we're talking about here. businesses are having to play catch up with the level of innovation that's been happening in the consumer world. And the way to do that is through this business transformation, digital business transformation. So this silo picture just basically is there to emphasize the fact that when your customer looks at your organization, they don't see all these different silos. They see an end-to-end, I request a service, it gets delivered to me, and I'm either happy or I'm not. And these silos within your organization, silo working is often kind of described, I suppose, with a negative connotation. So it's a throwback to legacy command and control hierarchies and stuff like that. But silos are really, really important. I used this example last time, and that I'm happy to go to a hospital and be triaged by the nurse, but I don't want the nurse doing the operation on me. So specialization, that's why silos exist. And it's not a bad thing that silos exist. The problem is when the silo mentality takes over and it becomes about the goals of the silo as opposed to the goals of the organization. So this business transformation, digital transformation, call it whatever you want, the absolute necessity is that you need to connect these silos, not rip them down as you often hear, but actually connect them to ensure that one's talking to the other and all of them know what each other are doing and they all come together aligned with the goals of the business itself. So my big takeaway from this would be get serious about collaboration. So what it says here is the action of jointly working on an activity, project, or goal. A lot of people talk about collaboration. I often ask the question in sessions, how do you collaborate? Most of the time, it's meetings. Most of the time, it's phone calls, face-to-face, emails, that type of thing. But collaboration, the act of collaboration is a very, very different thing. So what are we talking about? We're talking about a new way of working, really. So the idea is that you don't just comment within your own little space or send emails to each other. You actually work out loud. So what you do is you kind of share your work, you narrate your work and allow other people to provide feedback. So there's this concept really of open dialogue. And what happens when in that type of environment, people are often not really happy to share what they do, but once they get in on it and get used to that way of working, you get ideas from others. Like, why don't you try it this way? What about that? And also it becomes really, really easy to engage experts through collaboration. And actually, once you got that expert knowledge and expertise into your collaboration feed, it's so much easier to just share that information. You can capture it and then use it for the benefit of your entire user community. It's about improving communication because basically you're working out loud. What we're talking here is about delivering more value. And as the quote at the bottom says, value comes from increased productivity. And productivity is derived from doing your best work with others, where you're separated by an office wall, a building, or an entire ocean. So collaboration is the one thing I'd encourage you to really, really look at. If you don't go through a digital transformation within your business, believe me, collaboration will leave you working better as an organization. So what do we do to kind of where to start with this collaboration and how to make it stick, how to make sure that it's adopted? So I would say, first of all, it's not about the technology. It's actually a solution to a business problem. So first and foremost, you need to define what that problem is and define the purpose of collaboration. So if you're an IT shop, collaboration might be to get problem management working correctly, to increase the agility and quality of your change management processes, to deliver a better service experience to the customer. So you could be collaborating about multiple things, but you have to define why you're collaborating. So make it a destination application. So what I mean by that is I hear a lot that people say, well, we started using Yammer or Slack or something along those lines to collaborate, but it kind of didn't take off, or it didn't stick. It took off at first and it didn't stick. And the main reason for that, when people ask why doesn't it stick, is that actually it's not where people go to get work done. So it's a sideshow. It happens as a kind of, I go back to a different application to do my work and I go to this sideshow to talk to people. If it's a destination application, you'll know it's a destination application because if you've got a collaborative environment and you're using the tools to get your work done, it'll be on everyone's desktop, everyone will be using it, it'll be open around the office. that's when you know that it's a destination application. But if you're going to start, think about it carefully, a small pilot group. So some key influencers, people who you know that are probably going to be pretty good at these things. It could be just a single team, it could be a couple of teams, but get that going with a small pilot group. Then setting up a few workspaces and boards. So these are kind of like conversation topics. So a workspace, we might be talking about our latest project to roll out this application. We may be talking about an event that's coming up. We may be talking about how to drive the business goals for this year and how to improve upon what we did last year. But these workspaces allow for this kind of open dialogue and sharing of ideas and information, and populate it with good content. So you've got to lead by example with this thing. So sharing kind of your knowledge, sharing your documents, sharing your ideas. The days of hoarding knowledge are dead. And now basically you succeed within an organization by sharing what you know and enabling others. So it's very, very easy when you start with a collaboration tool. People will flock to it when you first roll it out. They think this is cool, it's a great way to do things, but what you'll find is that people slip back into old ways of getting stuff done. So one of my customers said to me, I thought it was a great idea. He said, anytime I get an email, what I do is I copy it into a workspace. And then basically I just reply via the workspace and give the person the link to the actual workspace. So people will slip back into old ways, doing things like sending emails, but you've got to encourage and reinforce that good practice to make sure that it doesn't keep happening. Ask users to share their experience and just be persistent and provide that communication training and support to make sure it's happening, because believe me, it is worthwhile. This is taken from an Aberdeen blog called The Collaborators Advantage, and what it finds is that basically there are some major benefits to collaboration. So within collaborative organizations, you get faster access to business critical information, easier to identify subject matter experts. You can access stuff from mobile phones, on-time project delivery, and fostering of innovation through the organization. What that the McKinsey study found was that you got, with collaborative environments, a 41% increase in employee satisfaction. Once you're collaborating, you don't really need to travel. There's not as many meetings for a start, and the meetings that are there are kind of not only less frequent, but actually much shorter, because once you're collaborating, you know what's going on. You don't really need to be briefed for a meeting and to discuss everything in it. You should have that coming to the meeting itself. So what you'll see is that it's well worthwhile doing, and take it seriously, because you will have an advantage in actually collaborating. So what we're talking about here is disrupting yourselves. So innovation is doing the same things, but doing them a little bit better. So if you're using innovation not only to do the same things, but to actually start doing new things, the minute you've disrupted yourself, you'll know, because you're doing things now that make the old things you're doing obsolete. So, it's about time that, certainly in IT, that we began to disrupt ourselves and take a new attitude, because someone else will disrupt it if not. So I'll leave you with a few bits and pieces on the myths that transformation, digital transformation, is only an IT thing. This is right across the organization. It affects every part of the organization and how they interact with their customers. It's about increasing speed to market for software. No, it actually does strengthen a team's ability to build the right product and in the right way more rapidly. This is one I hear a lot. We're too complex to adapt in an agile way. Actually, I would say that doing this actually mitigates complexity, because once you start focusing on the things that matter, you'll find that actually your processes become a lot simpler and a lot more efficient to boot. So that's the other thing. People that tried this failed, limited their careers. Actually, this is not an individual thing. This is actually a group. This is a group thing. So if we're transforming as an organization, then it has to be owned by group, not by the individuals. And actually, fail fast. Of course, that's the message. Small steps, small successes, small failures. So it's not career limiting at all. In fact, it can make a big change. Transformation means big projects and sweeping changes. No, this is little things done every day with great care that over time accumulate to transformation. So we're not talking about digital transformation projects here. What we're talking about is basically understanding where we need to go as an organization and piece by piece actually doing things to make sure that we get there. So I'll use this as a little bit, how would I say it? I don't know, a little bit emotive, but I would rather use the kind of probably a little bit more cynical view of this. This stuff is happening. So the change is happening. And you've got two choices. You can either be the butterfly or you can be the empty husk that remains clung to the leaf. So I would say get thinking about change and get doing this fast. So thank you very much, everybody. I don't know if there has been any questions coming in during this session, but we'll have a look at the questions pane now. If not, please, please, please type any questions you might have into the questions pane and I'll do my best to answer them. So where are we? Right, can I have a look at that questions pane?
No questions at the moment.
Right. Okay, folks, we haven't got any questions coming in just yet, so I can give you a moment to just basically raise some questions. It's in the control panel on the right-hand side. Okay, we'll give you another kind of 20 or 30 seconds. Okay, so we've still got a lot of attendees in here, but nobody's got any questions. So unless any appear in the next couple of moments, I'll just remains for me to thank you for attending this session, and we shall catch up with you in due course on another topic at another time. Right, no questions, folks. So
there is one.
Oh, sorry. Okay, right. So. You're right. Okay. What are the things to keep in mind when moving a mid-sized organization to public cloud? Right, moving a mid-sized organization to public cloud. Yeah. Okay. Right. Well, first and foremost, I think what you've got to be aware of is that actually people always assume that their own kind of security is going to be a hell of a lot better than most of the cloud providers. And I have to say, in my experience, that's simply not the case. But when you're moving stuff into the public cloud, you do have to give some serious thought to the skills you're going to need within your organization, because they're going to be very different to what you've had up to now. So when you on-premise stuff, you need people who can actually deal with the integrations. You need people to deal with upgrades and maintenance, et cetera, et cetera. Now that changes completely to managing your suppliers, to ensuring that you got the right type of negotiation skills, you got the right type of people in place to actually deal with your supplier management. Service integration and management, SIAM, if you haven't read about that, do take a good look at it. There's lots of other considerations as well. So cost. So if you're moving to public cloud, people are talking about how much cheaper it is for your organization, but unless you can manage your capacity and manage your consumption via the cloud, it can become a very, very expensive exercise. So the skills that we now need are kind of like financial management. We need to be serious about capacity and availability management. So it's a whole different ball game. So skills, to be honest, that are not that prevalent within most IT organizations that I find today. But what you generally do tend to find is if you can get that move to public cloud, you can give people mobility, you can give them access from other devices and stuff like that. It does pay off in the longer term. It gives people freedom and flexibility to work from wherever they want. That's a big, big plus for your organization. There are a ton of other stuff that I could mention, but I shall leave it just there to save waffling any further. So we've got another question just popping in here. Right. Okay, I work in an organization that is focused on a conventional reductionist form of management. So the classical kind of command and control, I presume that's what we're talking about. How can I promote a different approach to that? Oh yes, okay, so yes, so conventional command and control. The thing is, within a command and control organization, it's actually quite difficult to influence things. If your leaders are not going to listen, then the way that you can promote that is a bit of a groundswell, getting people behind an initiative to actually improve things, getting people behind this kind of more collaborative ways of working within the organization to actually show them that actually there is an appetite for this, there is benefits in doing it, etc. But at the end of the day, if management are not going to listen, I'm not trying to be glib here, but go elsewhere where they are likely to listen, because command and control, to be honest, it doesn't even work that well in the army these days. I was attending an event in the US at one stage, and I spoke alongside a guy called Captain Michael Abrashoff, who was a Navy commander who turned the kind of worst performing ship in the Navy into one of its best. And what he said was that, it simply doesn't work to tell people what to do. One of the first things he did was sat in his office on the ship and basically invited all the crew members in to give suggestions as to how they might actually improve things. So what I would say is that if you've got collaborative working within your organization, and you've got this kind of command and control style management, if you can get a team of people together to actually focus on a couple of things that really, really need improvement, and to put forward and work through those ideas, we'll say in a workshop or in a workspace, ideally in a collaborative tool, what you will find is that people can't ignore a sea of voices. And if you do find people ignoring a sea of voices, then, as I said, probably time to look for another job. So I don't know if that answers your question in any way, but if you can get people focused on an improvement agenda and get a lot of people involved, so there's groundswell of opinion, and take that to management and see if they can be part of it. If they can't, well then, it's a difficult call. I hope that answered your question, Richard. Okay, so we got another one here. Let's see.
That's just response.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay. So that's sorry, Richard just said promoting cross-functional working. That's a really good idea. It's a really good idea. So learning how kind of different teams work and across the organization, and understanding basically what it takes to deliver something to a customer end to end. That's a really, really good approach. Folks, I'm going to leave it there because we're coming up to that time. Thank you very, very much for attending, and I will be catching up with you on another topic fairly soon. So thank you for your time. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Patrick, for taking us through that presentation. I hope everyone found it useful. If you have any additional questions, please don't hesitate to contact us here at Hornbill. Thank you and goodbye.